But then that just begs the question, what in the world was the initiating force behind all of this? And how in the world was this ever able to continue for so long? Well, let's see if we can get some more clues from everything they told us. They said that they were following a pillar of clouds around by day for 40 years, and a column of fire around by night for just as long. And they said they were always beneath the shade of the clouds of glory. And when those clouds would move their shade, they would just pick up and go with them. Interesting. A bright, luminous column of fire, you say? Interesting. I wonder what might have caused that. Well, if you had a magnetic excursion event right above that coastal area, then that would have definitely caused that. Where the Earth's magnetic field is effectively weakened, at least in that one specific area. And then that fire would have also meant that a whole bunch of extra solar energy was just pouring directly down into that region. And then that energy would have also explained why there was all of that extra heated air down there driving all of those massive water spouts. And then that anomalous heating from the upper atmosphere would also be causing a very dramatic high-pressure system. And then that incredible spike in local pressure would of course be pressing out on everything, especially against the ocean beneath that oculus. Whenever there's a hurricane that's making landfall, if it's big enough, it'll also drag the ocean up onto the land with it. And that's because it's pulling it up with its siphoning low pressure effect. And of course, its massive winds are also pressing the bulge even higher. But that's what tends to happen with a major hurricane. Well, our inverted system out there in the desert would be having precisely the opposite effect. This pressure would be crushing down the ocean. And then the winds, of course, would be blowing radially outwards and magnifying this effect. In other words, this would be massively depressing the local ocean. It would be splitting the sea apart in a giant bowl shape. And if the bottom was fairly accessible, it would expose it and then dry it. Precisely how the Hebrews described it. So it was all connected. The splitting of the ocean and the emergence of manna. But then this still begs the question of how this aurora borealis effect even happened in the first place. Well, this is where it gets interesting. What causes the auroras to begin with? Might it be from the solar winds striking our magnetic field, and then those particles traveling along the lines of flux until they finally get funneled into a point where the Earth's magnetic field is bending inwards? Indeed it is. So, something must have been causing our magnetic field to be dented inwards around this Red Sea area. So something must have been distorting our normal magnetic field pattern, which means that something within the Earth must have been flowing in a different direction. Which means that something of an unknown extraction must have been distorting the way our inner Earth magma was flowing. But what exactly? What in the whole wide world could have initiated that type of flow disruption? Well, there was a massive cataclysmic volcano around this time period. Does that count? It was one of the biggest and most destructive in all of history. And it was right across the Med, just south of Greece a little. It was about 5 times more powerful than Krakatoa, and it was believed to be the single most percussive event ever experienced by any human beings in all of history. So that sounds pretty big. There were obviously lots of things going on inside of the Earth at that point. Lots of things being jostled and moved around. So, yeah, that could definitely have caused a major magnetic field distortion. But we can even take this one step further. So, you've got a volcano going off, and then this creates a hurricane in the magma down beneath it. And then this creates a dynamo effect and a magnetic field throughout this region. And then this creates a magnetic shadow that projects all the way up until it reaches up above the Red Sea area. And then this causes a major funnel-shaped depression in the Earth's magnetic field up there. Every single phenomena within the Exodus account was the result of some sort of seismically induced distortion in the Earth's magnetic field above this area. Their descriptions of it are far too precise. So, there you have it. The seismic activity causes everything. The plagues which descended upon Egypt, which are all known to be side effects of limnic eruptions. The pillar of fire that directed Moses to the location of the Red Sea crossing. The splitting and the corresponding drying of the Red Sea ocean channel. The column of clouds that came between them and the pursuing Egyptians. The releasing and the subsequent collapsing of the Red Sea upon the Egyptian army. The pillar of fire in the night sky that guided them after dark for 40 years. The pillar of clouds beneath that fire that also gave them shade in addition to guiding them. The manna from heaven and the water from the watersheds that completely sustained them for an entire generation. And also every other phenomena, from the events at Mount Sinai to the destruction of the fortress of Jericho. And if you were like me, you basically had no recollection of any of those other Sunday school stories. So let's talk about it. So, just a few days after they made it through the sea crossing, they eventually came to a mountain in the deserts of Arabia. They referred to this location as Mount Sinai. And at Mount Sinai, a powerful thunderstorm started to gather around it. And then a towering column of fire came and descended down upon it. They said that there was a smoke that began to rise up and issue forth from the mountain. And then the mountain all around began to rumble. And then a massive heavy horn began to blast from it. So, by now, I'm sure you can guess where this is going. Yes, that's right, this is our Aurora system. This was that unfiltered solar wind energy, just blasting right down through that portal. But then how did it get all the way out there to Mount Sinai? Well, the Earth's magnetic field is actually dynamic. It likes to move around and just sort of meander. So of course, as the field was doing this, it would be moving that system around, and also changing its intensity and modulating it. And this would be a perfect way to strategically aim that thing around its stuff. You could place it right over that entire mountain and cause it to resonate and tremble. You could place it right over the city of Jericho and cause its walls to shake and crumble. You could place it right over the River Jordan and cause its waters to split apart for them. You could blast a bunch of particles up into the atmosphere and eject them up so high that they ended up forming hailstones as large as boulders. And then you could arc those boulders over right onto the Amorites. And then you could crank that corona system up for a grand finale, and you could ignite that auroral blaze and turn the night into day for them. And then the Hebrews could conveniently use that to finish their battle against the Amorites. And as far as you could tell from the battlefield, it could appear as though the sun and the moon were standing still. So, there you have it. Absolutely everything that the Hebrews claimed they experienced could have so easily been the work of this one single phenomenon. Well, what about Moses and his burning bush? Surely that must have been embellished, right? I mean, how could a bush just start burning but then just never consume its own substrate? How is that even possible? Did Moses just accidentally ingest some mushrooms or something? Well, no, I'm pretty sure he didn't. In fact, I'm pretty certain that this entire event was just some good old-fashioned St. Elmo's fire. St. Elmo's fire is one of the coolest and most elusive events in nature. It happens when there's a charge difference between the objects on the ground and the air around them, and when the air itself has some sort of frost or dust in it, and when the air particulates themselves can accept that charge directly into them. So this is a charge that actually wants to get out into those ionized air molecules. It actually wants the air that's all around it to absorb its electrons. It's not just a charge up in the clouds wanting to arc its way out in a single discharge. No, it's a difference between the ground and the actual air column, and it wants to get out into it. And so this charge will tend to seek the highest objects. It'll essentially accumulate atop the objects which are the most like antennas. So it'll accumulate in things like trees, and mountaintops, and in the mass of ships at sea out on the water. And then this is when it really gets interesting. Whenever that charge begins to get heavily concentrated up there, it just erupts out into the air like a hissing blue electric fire. It's just this jet of effusive sapphire plasma like a whispering indigo ghost flame. And what's more is that it never actually heats up its substrate or ever burns down its structure. It just fizzles directly off of its most elevated extremities. Oh, and I almost forgot, this phenomenon is usually caused by either a weather anomaly or by a disturbance in the underlying seismology. So there's that seismic activity again. And they said that Moses had actually witnessed this mystery plasma, issuing forth from a thorn bush, amidst the slopes of a local mountain, in an area known for its volcanic activity, at essentially the exact same time as all of this other stuff was going on. So, there you go. Perfect recipe for St. Elmo's fire. Oh, and it even says that the bush actually told him to take his sandals off, because the ground on which he was standing was holy. Well, that's a pretty lucky break that the bush actually took him aside and mentioned that. Because if it didn't, then the electrical potential in that ionically supercharged thorn bush would have reached out and touched him. And it wouldn't have been a nice touch. And then the Exodus might have ended before it started. So, there you go. Absolutely everything they claimed they saw was all related to this one single era of seismic activity. From the bush, to the plagues, to the parting of the waters, and from the manna to the events at Mount Sinai. And then the sun even appearing to stand still. It was all connected. And it was all so intuitive. And they described it so perfectly. Like an encrypted treasure map. Touché, my ancient Hebrews, touché. You win this round. I'll give you this one. But you owe me. And the fact that they just kept having all of this absurdly impossible luck with all of these events taking place is essentially your biggest clue that there was something a bit more peculiar going on. If you know what I mean. Touché, my burning bush, touché.